Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special panel discussion. My name is John Manganaro, and I'm a senior reporter with ThinkAdvisor.com. We're here today at the American College of Financial Services FinServe Summit 2024, a gathering of advisors who are looking to share knowledge and learn from one another. I'm thrilled to be here. Let me introduce our panel, and what we'll be talking about today is all things retirement. First, we're joined by Ande Frazier, a financial advisor with Peachtree Planning Corporation. Also, we're joined by Rosenzweig, an executive business consultant at Diversified LLC. Also, Ryan Swenson, the Chief Growth Officer at Carey Stamp & Co. And last but not least, Terrell Dinkins, an investment advisor and president at OBN Wealth Advisors. What I want to say, first of all, is that the American College has a wealth of research on all the topics we're going to be talking about today. We'll be talking about advisors' knowledge about retirement planning and their lack of knowledge about retirement planning, as well as consumers' knowledge about retirement planning and where their knowledge gaps are most prominent. First, Terrell, I want to come to you with a question. And when we were planning this discussion, you made a really interesting point, which was that your clients, say if they're in their 40s or 50s, they tend to have trouble thinking ahead and picturing what their life may look like by the time they reach retirement, whether that's from a financial perspective or even a personal perspective, what their life might look like. Could you tell us a little bit about that tension and how difficult it is for people to see themselves in retirement?
That's a great question, John. I think it starts with us as advisors. Throughout the planning process, we need to talk about retirement with them. And one of the issues that I have seen is that people have unrealistic expectations of, can I retire at 55? And I think 55 is kind of unrealistic unless you're, independently wealthy. So I think as advisors, if we're doing more planning and throughout the planning process, share with them what it looks like based on where they are now and helping them get where they want to be financially as well as the social aspects of the retirement.
Yeah. And do you ever find, Terrell, sticking with you for a moment, that people maybe underestimate the amount of wealth they could achieve? Say if you're serving someone who's in their 30s or 40s even, and they're earning well, they're saving well, they often have fear about retirement, but maybe sometimes you can tell them, hey, your situation's looking pretty good.
Absolutely. You know what? Numbers don't lie. And that's one of the reasons why I love this business. Yeah. Is I call it show and tell. You can tell a person you'll be okay, and you can show them they'll be okay, but if you show and tell, painting the picture of this is what it could look like, I think it brings joy and it relaxes the clients, knowing that I'll be okay because I'm on track based on what I'm currently doing with my saving and investing.
Yeah. And Ryan, I wanted to come to you with a question along that line. During our discussion prior to this, you talked about the importance of visualization and using planning software. I think Terrell kind of described what it's like to show people, but could you tell us how you help your clients visualize retirement, maybe running Monte Carlo simulations, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, a lot of people are visual learners. And sometimes if we're talking at a client, it's hard sometimes to conceptualize. That's a communication problem sometimes on the advisor side.
Sure.
But we try to leverage visuals and financial planning software where you can plug in a savings rate or their withdrawal rate, put in their goals. Hey, you want to travel to Europe when you retire. And you can put all this information in, all this data, and pull different levers as far as is inflation, what is that going to be at? And it punches out a lot of different graphs.
Sure.
And it becomes real instead of, why am I giving you all this information? What are you doing with it? And you're just going to give me a recommendation off of that. It shows, as they can see it, how real retirement can be and how it will function for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Irv, coming to you, when you think about your clients who are grappling with retirement and sort of grappling with what the future will hold, what are some of the ways that you can help assuage people's fears? Or on the flip side, what are some of the ways that you can sort of, inspire people to start saving a little more when you see, the graphs aren't looking all that great? Is it a little bit of kind of use fear a little bit, or do you try to avoid that?
I think they've got fear already by the time when they step in the office. But look, it's a hard job. I mean, think about the unknowns, longevity, market risks, tax rates, kids that might need help. I mean, you can have the software, you can try to build in some of these scenarios, but it's a difficult thing. So I understand that, but you need to do the work as the advisor. I mean, you've got to crunch your numbers. You got to do the what ifs. You need to educate yourself through, like the American College and other places like this, to basically gain the knowledge to best help the client. But again, starting early if possible. Talking about the tax benefits related to retirement savings, the fact that oftentimes there's a company match so that they're encouraged to do that. So there's a lot of carrots that you can kind of put out in front of the client in that regard.
Yep. I think one of the most effective things to tell people if they have the opportunity to be in a workplace retirement plan is, don't leave the free money on the table.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
They love that, and it can be a balance of carrots and sticks. I think that makes sense.
Sure.
And Ande, coming to you, we have spoken before about this idea that, as an advisor, you want to be knowledgeable, you want to, attend, maybe not the American College in particular, but you want to get your licensing and you want to be really knowledgeable about retirement, but you have to balance that with sort of just throwing too much information at the clients and sort of giving them information overload. How do you think about that balance and sort of what's the advisor's job and what's, the client's responsibility?
I think that one of the things that we can do as advisors is take in all the knowledge that we have and ask better questions, and then actually shut up and listen.
Sure.
Give them a chance to be able to respond. I think that a lot of times we're uncomfortable with the pauses, and so we feel we need to fill the space. But I think this is a complex conversation that people are having with themselves and their loved ones about what does retirement look like. And so they may need a beat to be able to gather their thoughts and express what it is that they're concerned about. So we have to give them that opportunity. And we have to do better at not just asking the first initial question, but we have to be better at asking the second, third, fourth question based on what the clients are responding back to us. So we have to double down a little bit and allow them the space to be able to think through their answers. Not everybody's going to know right off the top of their head what that answer is.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever find that you're surprised by things that clients say when it comes to retirement and sort of how they're envisioning their life? Do you find that it's mostly fear is the emotion that's driving their thinking, or?
Sometimes no. Sometimes they think that they're doing really, really well, and then when you really show them the reality of it, it's a little bit of a reality check for them. Mm-hmm. I think that for a lot of people, they're trying to figure out what's the least amount they need to do now because they don't want to sacrifice today. Mm-hmm. So they kind of bargain with their future. And the thing that I think is the scariest about that is we can't just plan for what we want to hopefully happen. We have to plan for what's the worst case here. What if there's a major cognitive health issue that's going to keep you into a facility for 10 to 12 years? What's that going to look like to your money? So I think that we have to balance out reality checking with people, really good expectations, what their habits are, but also manage their own emotions, whether it be fear or overconfidence.
Yeah. Maybe we could do a bit of a lightning round with the panel, mm-hmm. and Terrell, maybe I'll start with you. If you reflect on your experience learning as an advisor, what are some of the things that you've learned that have been most useful when it comes to serving retirement clients? So maybe that's things like Social Security claiming, knowledge about annuities. What comes to mind?
I'll be honest. When I went through the RICP designation program, one of the things that stood out that I don't think people talk about because a lot of us are concentrating on money and building the nest egg, but it's the encore, the social aspects of retirement. I feel like now as a designee with the RICP designation, I do a better job painting the picture or allowing or helping the client paint the picture of what do you want it to really look like, and then getting them to do an exercise of creating a 2-week journal of what my retirement might look like. And I think a lot of times we miss the steps of the social aspects of retirement.
Mm-hmm. Irv, anything come to mind?
I'll do a shout out as well. I mean, I'll thank my CRPC for allowing me to get more depth in creative retirement planning, because I had a lot of professional clients, doctors, lawyers, and a lot of them actually had independent income. They were either testifying in court or writing books or doing research, and setting up individual type of plans in addition to the group plans, really, which can be extremely lucrative using a defined benefit plan.
Mm-hmm. Ande, anything come to mind?
I think that I did the RICP very early on. I think when in terms of the program when it was launched. And for me, I think it's the combination of being able to specialize and be detail-oriented, be microscopic and understand some of those nuances, but also be able to then go back out and look at it from a big picture standpoint. How does Social Security integrate with retirement planning? How does the behavioral and social aspects integrate? How does, all of the longevity, the health care, all of that needs to be worked out, because people are living their lives all at once, right? They're dealing with all of these all at one time. And so I think that the education that I've been able to get has helped me to go in deep when I need to, but also take a step back and look at the big picture.
What about you, Ryan? We were in the hallway, not to put a spotlight on one thing in particular, but for example, you said you learned about reverse mortgages and sort of maybe balancing the public perception of a certain type of product versus, what the marketplace can actually deliver to people. I think annuities are a similar thing. They maybe have a reputation amongst the public, but as advisors, you sort of know that they can actually be very useful and affordable and, good products. So what do you think?
Taking the RICP, going into it, truthfully, I was like, reverse mortgages? We're going to talk about reverse mortgages here and annuities? And it's really just built confidence in myself to then portray that to my clients, to help lead and coach them to say, not all that's bad.
Right.
And all of this is just a tool in your financial tool belt. And not necessarily you have to do all these things, but at least you know that they're there. And I've got a good understanding to help guide you through this. Yeah, the RICP was really good in just getting that information and then being able to explain it and communicate it to the clients.
They have options.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're doing is we're creating options for clients. And I think if they have all of the options on the table, we're doing a great service for them because we're providing the options and they feel like they trust us.
Yep.
Because we have done the work in making sure that they have a full table. There's a lot on the table for them to choose from.
Yep. I can imagine a client who's working with an advisor who doesn't have as much experience and, they want guidance about their life and retirement, but the advisor's only talking about the stock portfolio.
Exactly.
That could be very upsetting and frightening, I think, for clients. One question I wanted to ask you again is this idea of creating an income floor, for example, and creating that peace of mind. Could you talk a little bit about that and how it makes your clients feel when you sort of at least give them a confidence about a baseline of standard of living in retirement?
We always think about I have a pension so I can feel comfortable knowing when pensions were popular. Companies don't have pensions now. But I didn't put two and two together to think that a pension is a floor. Your floor, and I'll explain this, is that guaranteed source of income that you create and have in your life so that you can feel comfortable knowing that the basics are covered. And so now, I've even taken that class of the course, I think about the floor. How can I help my clients create that guaranteed source of income in their retirement? Because if the basics are covered, then you have clients that can go out and create this encore second career to cover some of the fun things, especially if they don't retire with this $2-3 million, because that's the buzzword now.
Yep.
How much are you going to retire with? Is $1 million enough or $2 million enough? So having a floor or that guaranteed source of income, or showing them how they can create that guaranteed source so that the basics are covered. I think people feel comfortable knowing that, well, if I cover the basics, then maybe I'll be okay, or figuring out how to get the rest of the money.
Ande, one thing that we talked about previously was the importance of tax management and just thinking about taxes in the retirement planning effort. That's something that I think all advisors really should be, pretty well versed in. Even just from the basics of, 401k, traditional versus Roth, or how to sort of structure income. Could you tell us a little bit about, what you've learned is most important there, and sort of, what you deliver to your clients in terms of tax management?
Sure, and I have a lot of clients that come to me that have worked with other advisors where that is not the case. The advisors do not understand. They may know, okay, you got to pay some tax, but they don't really know how to do proper coordination of assets in terms of tax planning. So one of the things that we look at in our firm is we want them to have tax diversification just like they would have asset class diversification. We want them to have things in tax-free accounts, tax-deferred accounts, and just regular accounts that have some capital gains treatment, so that when they're taking income in retirement, they maybe can engineer to stay in a bracket so that their Medicare premiums aren't going to go up. Right. So to be able to engineer that by pulling from different sources, I think is really, really important. And then let's just face it, the rules around IRAs and distributions and inherited IRAs and all of that has gotten to be so complex that, and there's not a lot of clarity even in the IRS guidelines on some of it. So we're all trying to do our best. So I don't know how clients are ever expected to do that. So the more knowledge that we can have in that area, I think the better service will be to our clients.
Yeah, and I think it's a reflection of what you're saying, the fact that, on ThinkAdvisor.com, some of our most popular coverage, week by week is talking about just that, like, how to manage your tax burden and how the law has changed so much and how the regulations have shifted when it comes to things like estate planning and long-term capital gains, all of these things. It reflects a thirst for knowledge amongst not only the professional advisor readers who go to ThinkAdvisor.com, but also the population of the public that does as well, because they're looking for that information.
And John, let me just add one thing about that too. When we have older people that are taking required minimum distributions and they've raised the age now, yep. But it was pretty punitive up to this point. If you miss it, it's a 50% tax penalty if you miss that. And you think about what I'm experiencing with my older clients, they may be having some early cognitive decline where they're not remembering to take these required yep. minimum distributions. And what role do we advisors have to play in helping them? We try to remind them, but there's just a lot of complexity around that now we're dealing with an older population where they may not have some of the resources available to help them be on top of it like they used to. And so us as advisors take on a bigger role mm-hmm. for that.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. Irv, I wanted to come to you next. During our planning call, you were sort of reflecting on how the product set and the rules have changed in over the course of your career. Just as an advisor who has a lot of experience, how have you worked to keep up with the latest product developments and changes in regulations? It's almost a sort of a full-time job apart from serving clients, right?
For sure. I mean, the first thing you got to do is eliminate bias and remain objective. You're getting a lot of stuff that annuities are bad and reverse mortgages are bad and things like that. You've got to be true to the client. And again, a lot of the stuff you have to weed out, and you have to do the work on behalf of the client, because they're getting bombarded by that. They're getting bombarded by salespeople trying to sell something or negative selling something so that they're persuaded to buy something that the salesman's selling at that point in time. I like to call it strategic investing, and you don't get that until you have the product knowledge. Like it's one of the things that I enjoy seeing from the American College and like to see more of, where products may hit the market. We talked a little bit about hybrid life because I was doing conventional long-term care insurance, which did not turn out well. I mean, the companies either went out of business, they keep raising rates every year. So when hybrid life came out, that gave you an opportunity to kind of kill three birds with one stone. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really good product, to assist clients. Also, annuities, which definitely have a bad rap, but back in my day, products came out, the variable annuities that actually had a guaranteed minimum death benefit, minimum living benefit. So even if the market went south, you actually had this buffer against the market that would allow you to still succeed and generate something that would offer you, something that would offset outliving your income. And that's one of the, the hallmarks of what we hear from Wade Pfau and some of the others at the college, where we talk about fixed annuities being a component of a well-engineered, again, going back to strategic investing, well-engineered retirement plan.
Yeah. That's floor is the floor. We just talked about that.
For sure.
Or the three-legged stool. You got annuities that might serve as that floor, or pension, or Social Security is,
That's right.
does that. And then you've got life insurance and the role it plays in retirement. We don't necessarily always spend enough time talking about the importance of having life insurance in retirement, and then, investments that can serve as that non-discretionary, or the discretionary income, to where they can use that to spend on trips and the things that they enjoy. And
Ryan, it's a related point, but this idea that, so many clients, and rightly so, they focus on saving for, decades and decades. It's hard for them to make that switch and actually flip to the spending. What have you experienced in terms of helping clients just wrap their head around that?
That goes to Ande's point. We do such a great job at coaching and leading our clients to accumulate and save, and we rah-rah them on. And maybe their goal is to travel, right? Well, then they get to the point where they've done all this saving, and then they're apprehensive about, well, can I spend? I'm gonna outlive my money. And that's where the psychology and the financial behavioral part comes into play. Well, no, you've done a great job, and now this is your goal. You can reward yourself. This is what you want, and this is what we've planned for. And there's a little more of that soft skill that's involved when you have those conversations with clients. And I think we can do better, as far as, I know we are asset gatherers, but it's the decumulation part that can be very a difference maker in how you run your practice.
Yeah, no question. I wonder if anyone else on the panel, have you experienced that your clients who are entering retirement really struggle with sort of opening the faucet?
I think some of them open the faucet too
much.
too much.
And some do.
Some people open up that first year gets people in trouble because they want to pull out too much the first year, when there is a method to this whole madness of how much you should pull out the first year to make your money last. But I think there are some people that run out of money in retirement because every day in retirement is 365 days of vacations.
Every day is a Saturday.
Every day is a Saturday, absolutely.
I think I spend more on Saturdays than I do on,
You spend more on Saturday, that's right. So every time they go out of the house, you're spending money. So sometimes it's the opposite of, I don't want to outlive my money, but I spend too much in retirement. So I think as advisors, we have to help our clients create that balance of lifestyle and in retirement, and what's going to help them feel comfortable knowing that they won't run out, but they're still able to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Irv, I wanted to ask you, maybe if you reflect on some of your wealthier clients, the more successful people, you mentioned, doctors, some of the professionals you're serving, folks who clearly have enough to, have a decent lifestyle in retirement. How much of their time do they spend thinking about, legacy and estate planning? Is that an important part of this whole retirement discussion?
The more successful clients that our firm has, they tend to be entrepreneurs. There's not enough time being spent on that, frankly. Right. I mean, it's something that you have to kind of remind them about, also remind them about their mortality. They don't, they think they're immortal at some point. So it's a constant process. It helps, again, going back to the fact that if we do the work, we orchestrate. I know that you have your own tax planning division, so basically provide them the insight, the tools. It makes it a lot easier in that regard to get them on the right path.
John, if I could just piggyback on that. I think we've talked about it a little bit, the behavioral and the psychological aspect of what we do. And when you have an entrepreneur who is, maybe they don't even see how they're going to exit, or they're not even thinking about it. Now we're talking about legacy planning. It's not just the financial part of it. Right. It's a coming to terms with, this is maybe the last stage of my life. It's coming to terms with, what do I want to leave my family or organizations, or things that I care about. There's a lot more of emotional conversations, family meetings, and that can be very confronting to a lot of people. And I think that's one of the reasons they're not doing a lot of the planning, or they may not be doing the planning like they really should be. It's because they can't figure out how to deal with some of the emotional questioning and conversations that need to take place. And so I think that us as advisors often operate as therapists too, and having to kind of guide that conversation. And we have to remember that we're dealing with a whole person, not just a part of a person when we're talking about retirement.
And the glaring omission might be business succession. That's their biggest asset.
Yeah.
They haven't really thought about it, or they're unrealistic about thinking about it. And frankly, if there's a buy-sell agreement that needs to be funded, that should have been thought about years ago.
Yes. Yeah, I did an interview not all that long ago with a business succession attorney, and she said the amount of work that's left undone in that area is absolutely tremendous. And it maybe the typical advisor would probably want to partner with a skilled attorney to get that sort of work done, but it's something that an advisor can bring to the table and try to start those conversations.
There's a lot of new work being done for advisors around business exit planning and thinking about the valuing of somebody's business. And what I find is that us as advisors tend to be more strategy oriented, where our attorneys are more, this is what you could do and this is what you can't do. Right. They're not always strategic. And so I think that we have a real opportunity as advisors to talk to business owners about exiting their business and recognizing that their business is an asset, and they need to understand the value of that asset, not just the year they want to get out, but many years in advance of that, and maybe even do some things strategically to increase the value over time.
Yep. Ryan, maybe another question for you, and it's crazy how fast time flies when we're having an interesting discussion. Just a couple minutes left, but how do you factor in maybe serving the next generation of your client's family as you think about working with them on retirement? Is it important for the advisor to sort of create relationships with the next generation, wherever possible, and also maybe your primary client is one spouse, but it's important to connect with the other spouse and then sort of make those connections. Maybe you could talk about that.
John, the great wealth transfer,
Yeah.
right? It's very important to get the next generation involved. It's challenging because it's not as probably fun as maybe a 20, 25-year-old would want to sit with a financial advisor.
Sure.
So it is, you got to be a little more tactful. There's got to be, I'm going to bring back the soft skills. Your approach is going to be a lot different.
Sure.
And it is a priority at my firm that you try to get that next generation. Actually, we work with a lot of Generation 3, G3s as well. But yeah, retaining, you got to get in front of it as soon as possible because it is important. And along with having the parents involved so that they can do the handoff. There's a lot of different tactics you can use, but just making sure they know who you are and staying in contact with them is super important.
Irv, we talked about that during the planning call. You mentioned that you have several client families where you're working with Gen 2, Gen 3. What are some of the tricks or tips you'd share?
Well, good parenting is probably the best trick, where they're looking out for the benefit of their kids, and they're encouraging their kids to start to learn about it. And we'll do that pro bono. I mean, we'll educate them a little bit. We'll assist them with their plan. Try to get them on the right course. And then the other thing that I talked about was products. I mean, tying into the wealth transfer and tying into some of these annuities. You have some of these products that were available that parents drew a 6% income from. God forbid they pass away, then there's this huge death benefit that passes on to the family. Yep. I mean, you did your job, and conveying that information, which is during a terrible time of a parent's death or whatever, but saying, look, we have this asset as a result of careful planning by your parents and things like that. That gets them encouraged and stimulated to also get on the right path going forward.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great discussion so far. We've got just 5 minutes left, and how I like to usually end these panels is with a bit of a round robin. And the question I often end with is, what's one thing that makes you maybe worried about the future for either your firm or for your clients about retirement, and what's one thing that makes you optimistic and excited? So, Ande, maybe I'll put you on the spot first.
Well, I think that we want to have younger people look at coming into this profession and understand the value. And I think that what I find, I have 2 children that are in Generation Z, and so they want to be able to be of service and give back and think about contributing in a large way to their community and to society. And this is a great profession to be able to do that. And I think that we have some real opportunities, but we also have to take a good look at where we are right now and start making some changes so that we can attract young people. So that's probably what makes me the most concerned, is making sure that we are not waiting around, that we are getting ahead of that, and that we are doing the things necessary to continue to have more people in our industry. Because the reality is consumers need us. You know, they have not been able, there's so much information online, it's noise at this point. Yep. And so they come to us because they just want us to make sense of it all and to know them and be able to make recommendations. And so we need advisors to stay into this profession and to be better able to help society there. So I think there's an opportunity, but there's also some concerns on how we're going to meet that need.
Yeah, well said. And Ryan, feel free to just echo that or whatever comes to mind for you.
Yes. The transition of advisors leaving the industry and retiring compared to what is coming in, there's a huge gap. Yep. And to take it one step further, my fear is I don't want the clients to suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. That part is what really hits home, because if we have a lack of experts and professionals, that's going to hurt them the most, or we don't want any kind of cookie cutter. So, but my hope and what I look forward to, what the American College is doing, and surveying and investigating in opportunities to bridge that gap, and they're doing a lot of great things with just the education portion. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that's happening, but that is one of my fears.
Yeah, agreed. And Terrell, please.
I'm worried about our young people feeling like everything has to be immediate. When you look at the parents, when you look at us, it was a gradual steps to wealth. And now everything is immediate, and I fear that we may not be able to pass down the generational wealth, or that wealth may not last because of social media and technology, them watching it, feeling like everything needs to happen now. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of that, I think as advisors, we can use those tools that I feel like in a way have been detrimental with this whole immediate gratification, but we can use those tools, go to the audience and do more educating the public, educating our younger generation, that younger group, where they are, which is in the social media channels.
Yeah, agreed. We'll have to chop up some of this discussion.
There you go.
Put it up on TikTok and get in touch. But Irv, last but not least, what do you think?
I think the good part would be products, favorable tax laws. There are buffer products out there. So if you're risk adverse, enter the market with some sort of downside protection. That very innovative, unless people have done calls, puts and call strategy prior to this. I think the bad part, or what needs work, is mindset and client education, because people tend to think digitally, ones and zeros, good and bad. Yep. They're not open-minded. And then again, educating the client to who's really an advisor, who's a broker, who's a salesman, who's really looking out for your best interests. They need that.
Yep. Well, thank you all. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it, and getting to know the four of you. Just to close, I would like to say a thank you to the American College of Financial Services for inviting me to host this panel today. Would really encourage folks to study up on the FinServe Summit. It's been a really great environment here. All the topics we've covered today are written about extensively on ThinkAdvisor in collaboration with the American College of Financial Services. So if you're looking for more information, that's a great place to go. With that, we'll close the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.